The next session, I am pleased to invite on stage Mr. Ashutosh Chadha. He's the Director Corporate Affairs of Intel South Asia. Intel is also our partners in the eCell Intel DST Eureka Business Plan Competition 2013. Can we have a huge round of applause for that? Just to introduce, Mr. Ashutosh Chadha is currently responsible for the education, CSR and environment mandates for South Asia, as well as focusing on the government relationships and engagements. As a part of the role given the country's overall development challenges, his objective is to enable digital infrastructure and infrastructure to enable inclusive growth, accelerate innovation to empower entrepreneurship and creativity, as well as support educational transformation to build 21st century. In his life, in his career spanning over 25 years, Mr. Ashutosh has worked at Microsoft Corporation, Shell India, and the National Dairy Development Board. He has had extensive experience in new business development, channel management, strategic planning, and policy advocacy, as well as sales and marketing. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Ashutosh Chadha on stage, speaking on entrepreneurship and in-house innovation.
All right, so that was a pretty tough act to follow between Mahesh and Ajit, so let's hope I'm able to do some justice to the session. I didn't know they were going to put my mug shot up there, but well, I would have given them a better picture to put up. Anyway, it's great to be here. Thanks to IIT and the Entrepreneur Cell to invite us here to talk about something. I've labeled my talk to talk about innovation and entrepreneurship for growing economies, and there's a link to what I think Mahesh talked about a little bit earlier. Why am I talking about innovation and entrepreneurship in the same breath? Because we sincerely believe that at the heart of it, every entrepreneur is an innovator, and sometime or the other, an innovator will spawn an entrepreneur venture. So that's fundamentally where we are coming from and what we'd like to share with you. If you look at the global transformations, right, the first 1500 years of the world saw the GDP double. That was basically because of the agricultural sort of revolution that happened. From 1500 to 1700, the GDP again doubled. That was typically because, again, of some more technological innovations which happened, but most importantly, from 1700 to 1950, the GDP doubled because of the Industrial Revolution. From the 1950 onwards till the 2000, in a lesser span of time, the GDP doubled again, typically because of the technological revolution or the digital revolution as we know of it. If you notice something very important, that the time when the GDP of the world has been doubling has actually been decreasing, and at the heart of all that has been innovation. But what causes that innovation? If you look at the stages of economic development across the world and across countries, there are three phases. There's a factor-driven stage, which is basically based on what you call commoditizing lower value products, right? There is the next stage, which we call is basically driven by efficiency, right? That's the time when you use economies of scale, sometimes use technology to drive that economy of scale, right? Roughly, the industrial phase accounts to that. And the third stage is the innovation-driven stage, the stage where you're really talking about creating IP, creating value which you commoditize. And I just stay with that thought, and when I come, if you look at the last Global Innovation Index, which happened in 2013, and I apologize, the picture's a little out, but if you look at the rankings in APAC, the Asia Pacific, you will see that the top countries which focus on the global innovation rankings, as well as which have higher GDP per capita, are typically countries which don't really have too much of physical resources. Look at the countries on the bottom: Malaysia, China, Thailand, India, Vietnam, Indonesia, Philippines. Fairly large countries, large populations, good physical resources, but low on the global innovation ranking, and their GDP also reflects the same. Some of you would have read the book by Thomas Friedman. If you haven't, I suggest you do. The World is Flat. He's of course had a follow-up book also after that. Thomas Friedman actually came up with a very interesting concept. He said the first era of competition was when countries used to compete against each other based on their military might, their physical resources, their mineral resources. The second era of competition was when companies, organizations competed with each other based on the products that they had. And we still have a little bit of that right now. But he said the third era of competition is where we are right now, where individuals are actually competing against each other based on their intellectual might. And if you look at it, some of the largest corporations today, some of the most wealthiest corporations today are built not just because of the physical resources that they mandate, but because of also the IP that they create. So you really have innovation leaders and you have innovation learners. The leaders are those who are actually milking the IP that they are creating, milking the innovation that they're doing. Let's look at India in a little bit deeper sense. If you look at India, India is ranked as of 2013, number 66 as far as their innovation is concerned. But we are actually ranked number 11 in terms of our innovation efficiency ratio. And I apologize, the picture is a little blurred for you guys at the back. What is the innovation efficiency ratio? It's basically nothing else but a ratio of the input, innovation input and the output. Given the constraints that we have as a country, constraints in terms of our maturity of our venture capital index system, our education system, the infrastructure that we have, given that limitation, right, the type of innovation that comes out of this country or the type of entrepreneurship in another way that comes out of this country is fairly high. So you can imagine what happened or what can happen if you're able to take care of this left side of our screen, the innovation input. If we set right our political environment, our regulatory environment, if we set right our education system, if we make it more attuned to driving research in higher education institutes, if we make it more attuned to driving entrepreneurship as a key part of the education life that we have, imagine what that can do to our, not just the efficiency ratio, but where it will propel India as an innovative economy. Stay with that. So we do understand that change and evolution is built on innovation. Right? That's no doubt about it. But change is coming very fast. Go back to my first slide where I said that the way the GDP has doubled, the time span has decreased over time. There are many countries in APAC who got independence or got freed from a lot of disastrous wars roughly at the same time that we got independence. But some of them have propelled themselves ahead of us. We have an opportunity. But how are we going to be ready to take care of that change? And how will we drive that innovation? What I'm going to talk about is what is that innovation culture? And some of these points actually Ajit and Mahesh talked about. We talk about it has to be continuous. It's not about stopping. You don't come out with a product, you don't come out with a service, you don't come out with a solution, start selling it in the market and stop innovating. If you do that, you will face disaster, you will die. You need to be able to take risks. You need to be able to fail. In our Indian ethos, in our Asian ethos, actually, failure is not looked well upon. To be an entrepreneur, to be an innovator, you need to learn to fail. If you don't, you will not learn from your mistakes. Investment, very interesting. There's been a study which says that in the global Fortune 500 companies, many of them have actually invested in the downturn. So it's not when you have money in the bank that you put money into research and development or research or innovation or building new businesses or building or milking new opportunities. You invest every time. Whether the economy is down or the economy is up, you invest. It's important. Because when you invest at that point of time, you actually are able to identify new opportunities. And that's what entrepreneurship is all about. You identify new opportunities, you identify how you can go after those new opportunities in different ways, which will add value to the customers at the end of the day. You have to be competitive. Again, it's not about creating something new, something revolutionary, or something big. It's going after that market. Like we talked about the red bus, it seemed to be an obvious solution. It grows. And last but not the least, it has to create a difference. It has to create a difference. While these tenets are all about innovation, how do you build an innovation culture? I think so, like I said in the beginning, it's very clearly linked with how it drives entrepreneurship. The skills or the attitudes that an entrepreneur needs to have. It's not going to be, you're not going to be an entrepreneur if you're not ready to fail. You're not going to be an entrepreneur if you don't keep seeing how you can keep adding value to whatever you have in your product portfolio. And I'm using product in the largest sense. It could be a service, it could be a solution, it could be an idea. You have to have that differentiator. Intel is where it is today. And for some of you that you know, in some ways we're struggling in a particular market. It's because of the innovation that we drive. So 45 years ago when our founders got together, they thought about innovation, they thought about becoming entrepreneurs, and that's where they brought us today, where we are. Mahesh actually came out with an idea. He talks about an idea where he said, there are 200 million people on the internet. There are 250 million people in India who may know English. What about the rest? There's a huge opportunity of creating businesses to engage the rest of the 1 billion people who exist in this country. But the problem is that they will not be able to interact with the internet, they will not be able to interact with technology because they don't know English, and most of the technology is based around English. He talked about how can you use voice interface, etc. There's another concept that is being done, and we're working on that, for example. And I just wanted to give you that idea because it sort of gels in with what Mahesh talked about. It's called perceptual computing. Every single person, irrespective of whether he's literate or illiterate, knows what a bus looks like. So is there a way by which I can actually look at perceptual computing with just a picture of a bus on a screen, and I can look at it and I can make sure that I can book my tickets without even having to type? These are ideas, and these are things that are being worked on. Many of you would have heard our chief executive at Las Vegas earlier this year talk about the Internet of Things. Tablets, smartphones, we all have that. But the future is when every particular thing that you own and have, which includes a shirt, which includes your shoes, which includes maybe the television that you have at home, which already is on, many of them are already smart TVs, but is there a way by which they can actually intelligently converse with each other? Can we start looking at bringing stronger and much better fuel cells into the house, which have connectivity with the way you manage your house? That's what the Internet of Things is all about. That's where innovation comes into play, and that creates a lot of opportunities. As far as we are concerned, we believe education, entrepreneurship, employment lead to economic growth. As Intel, we're doing our own bit in terms of supporting a lot of work around education, whether it is around STEM, whether it's around the higher education space, the K through 12 space. In entrepreneurship, as many of you would know, we drive a lot of entrepreneurship programs, both from a skill development perspective as well as from hosting contests. But I think so the fundamental point that we need to all understand is that link between entrepreneurship and employment is extremely critical. And if you step back, for this country, for India, it's even more critical. We have the youngest population in the world. We are going to have a situation where in the next 10 years, we're going to have surplus working population, and there are not going to be enough jobs in the private sector or the public sector to take care of all of us. So we need to become entrepreneurs. We need to become entrepreneurs. We need to give back value to the customers, and by becoming entrepreneurs, we need to create more jobs for others. To become an entrepreneur, you need to have ambition, you need to have passion, you need to have an idea, you need to have mentoring, you need to have venture capitalists, you need to have a whole lot of things. But there's one thing which you all need to have: belief in yourself. That's extremely important. That belief in yourself is going to be very critical, because whether you're in a job or not, there will be ups and downs in a job. There will be time when your managers sort of mess you up. But when you're an entrepreneur, you are your own manager. You're not just your own manager. If there are people working with you, you're their manager also. You need to believe in yourself to be able to ensure that you become successful despite the ups and downs. And last but not the least, what is your calling? The world is becoming a small place. Technology is helping do that. It's a global marketplace. When you innovate, do not just innovate for India, innovate for the world. That is what your marketplace is all about. That's all I wanted to say. I'll just leave you with a quote from one of our founders. Don't be encumbered by history. Go out and do something wonderful. You have the future. Go out and do something wonderful. Thank you very much.
And we would like to thank Intel for supporting us in the eCell Intel DST Eureka Businessman Competition 2013. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.